Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul?
and Jolene, and today we're talking about backtracking in your game.
Yes, some call it retconning, I think, too.
Saul uses these terms, and I have to look them up because I don't know what they mean.
I think it's a movie term, I think.
Yes, I looked it up, and it's doing the same. It says that it's a different interpretation of a previously described event. And I use the example of a murder mystery where each person is telling their perspective. So that's it.
I think that then role players are using it differently. What they do is they use it to change what happened in the game, not just because it's a different perspective, because they want to change what happened in the game. So backtracking, I think it's an interesting thing to do. I don't usually do that very often.
No,
I don't think.
and I don't think it's an interesting thing to do.
Well, interesting when you do it. I mean, for the reasons to do it. Because I think in the past, in the Shadowrun game, I did it sort of when the next following session, I said, oh, you know what? Change something. And everybody just goes, okay. It was like window dressing to me, right? It was like, oh, this didn't happen inside a bank. It happened inside an office building or something. So it didn't really matter. But for me to make the story make sense, that's what I did. I mean, that's the kind of what do you call it? Backtracking I've done is where I changed a little element of something that happened before, only for in my own head, for it to make sense. And the players seemed oblivious to the change, even when I told them about it, right?
Well, I think that we're talking more about this scenario. This guy says that he ran this adventure in a crypt, and all his players got killed.
Oh, but you only had like two players,
two
right?
Two players, yeah.
Yeah, that's not very.
And
many.
he says, I let them manage their own sheets, and the next day, one of the players came back to him and said, I didn't update my saves when we upgraded our characters.
Right.
And he says, I was 1 point short. I was 1 point short. I want to redo the battle. And
but
so this GM
dead, right?
says, what are the pros and cons of doing this?
Right.
And I'm going to tell you that you should say no right now because, one, they run their character sheet. If they didn't put it on it and they didn't update it or upgrade whatever they were supposed to when they leveled up, that's their problem.
There's only two players, right? And they're going to a crypt, so the chances of them being successful, if you throw something that's meaningfully tough at them, is not very good. There's not enough support for them. Now, I could possibly run a game with one player, but it would be a totally different game than if I ran a game for 5-6 players, right? So if the players came back to me and said, you know what, I made a mistake. I didn't this one roll. If I would have made this one roll, things would have been different or possibly different. You know what? I would have said, okay, you know what? Let's go through the whole adventure again. Let's do it again. I would be willing to do that because
this is for one player?
For the two players
okay.
In this situation.
But then don't you set a bad precedent?
Okay, there's that, but at the same time, I would kind of try to gauge how put off this player would be, or these two players would be, if I didn't do that. Would I lose my gaming group if this is all I had to play with?
Maybe you could do something, and one of the suggestions from one of the GMs that answered this question, which I thought was a good suggestion, was to run the same scenario with new players.
Well, yeah, there's that.
And have them pull the old players out and heal them.
Like happen really close to...
Yes. Or something like that versus, oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead. We'll redo the battle.
All right.
And then, you can change everything you did and
what could happen is the players could be real smart ass and make, and I'm using air quotes here, make the exact same character, and Bill the Butcher is now Bob the Bather or bath salt maker, and it's exactly the same character, and they go in and they do the same thing. Would you, as a GM, allow that?
No.
So they would have to make totally different characters.
Our friend Mike is always talking about coddling the players and consequences to your actions. So I'm just going to say right now that Saul always says, and if Saul ever says this and you're playing a game with him, are you sure you want to do that? That's a clue to you that you may want to backtrack your statement right then and there before you move forward, because he'll let you do whatever you want, but you're going to suffer the consequences of it.
I am self-defense. I also say, are you really doing that? So, well, anyway, I think I don't know. I am not a killer GM.
No,
right?
you're not.
I don't think I've. Well,
But you do like players to acknowledge so a lot of times you'll say, "Is that in game? Did you really say that?
yes.
Are you going to say that?" Because if you're saying it in the game, there's going to be consequences to it, right? Versus, why are you metagaming at the table? That kind of thing.
So you don't like the idea of backtracking?
No, I don't.
No. Okay, so
If I'm stupid enough to do something stupid,
what about for little things? You know, like I don't know what little things could be. Like, for example, let's say a player says, "Oh, my character, you know, when we went into that lady's house and we saw that brooch, can I just take it instead of leaving it there? And if it doesn't mean anything, and if really the brooch doesn't mean anything, and it's just like an extra 10 gold pieces in his pocket, would you let him do that?"
why would he even ask that?
I don't know.
Is he a thief? I mean,
maybe he might be, or something.
Or maybe he could, instead of phrasing it the way he did, maybe he could phrase it as, "Remember when we were in that lady's house? I forgot to tell you I picked up the brooch and put it in my pocket."
Okay, that might be that. No, well, okay, but would you allow that?
Would you?
I think it would be okay.
I don't see a problem with that kind of thing, right?
So for me, time is a big deal, right? If something just happened, like literally moments ago, like, oh, do you mind if I don't do that? You know, and other stuff hasn't happened on top of that, right? So that when you change that one thing, you don't have to change 5 different things after that happened. So I think that's okay, right? Like if somebody says, "Oh, I'm gonna fire my bow," and he starts rolling his bow. You know what? Instead of doing that, I'm going to hide. Okay, sure, I'll let that happen. That seem plausible, reasonable.
Yeah.
What happens? You know, I tend to do things. You know, I consider myself a GM that's in favor of their players, right? So if something they want to backtrack it that gives them a little bit of an advantage, like, you know, use a piece of terrain that they had kind of forgotten to utilize. You know, the high ground. You know how important the high ground is.
The high ground is always important.
Star Wars told you that the high ground is important. So I hate to digress, but I saw this. I saw this YouTube video where they show somebody on high ground, and it's actually not very advantageous, at least in sword fighting, right? This one guy has a sword, and the other they both have swords of equal length. But the problem with the person who's on the high ground,
they could get stabbed in the stomach easily,
or the feet, right? You can go after the person's feet, and it's just as, you know, if somebody chops at your feet and, like, you know, chops half your foot off, that would definitely impede your fighting ability. I thought it was kind of interesting. And it opens up different areas for attack where the person on the ground could attack the feet and the midsection. The person on top could really basically only attack the head the top part of the torso, which that's where people's, you know, attention is. So I thought it was kind of interesting. Ewan McGregor or Obi-Wan Kenobi, he was incorrect in the high ground. Because remember that famous statement?
Stop butchering the accent, dude. So
Anakin,
I think
the battle is lost. I've had the high ground. That's my Mexican Scottish accent. Jolene's beside herself.
I think that the only problem with allowing players to redo stuff right away,
right?
I don't think that's a problem, but it allows metagaming into it, right? Like, oh, if I do that, then this could happen.
Okay.
And then,
if that's what's
if I went this way, then. But you should always allow for those kind of planning sessions, or at least give the opportunity for the players to discuss amongst themselves what their plan is. Sometimes you do.
Right. Sometimes they have time.
Sometimes you don't.
If the characters have enough time. Another thing is players may not have the information or the expertise, but the character should, right? The character should be able to figure out, oh, in this situation, my shooting with the bow is not as very good, but my hiding is really good. You know, the character himself wouldn't do something stupid. Well, okay, they might do something stupid, but the character, you know, character knowledge instead of player knowledge, right? So, I mean, how many players out there have actual knowledge about hunting and fishing and hiding and stalking?
It depends on who you're playing with.
Well, of course, if you're playing with an elite special forces person, but Joe, who's an office boy, you know, Iggy, the stock boy, it probably doesn't do a lot of that stuff.
They might have read a lot of stuff, though, so you never know. Well, the only other I see a con of allowing these players to go back in and redo these two that died, right?
Oh yeah,
To go back in and redo the battle is that one, it's going to take away
well, they've already been through the whole thing.
it takes away the surprise
Yeah.
of what's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? It's the idea that maybe they don't want to lose their character, but if you go up against something that you know is going to kill you, like if you run into a dragon and you don't walk away, then you shouldn't go back to the GM and say, well, I really probably shouldn't have fought that dragon. Can I please have my character back and redo the encounter?
Correct. Well, we just recently played an online game where I thought it was a pretty tough fight. I thought we were going to die because there was a lot of kobolds, and then all these little ice creatures started attacking us, and them breathing on us like they took a fifth of my hit points.
Yes.
Right. We were third level, and there was only 4 players, which I thought was a really good size. I think we did pretty good. But then after that battle, we didn't even get a chance to breathe. More kobolds come out and
a small dragon.
a small dragon the size of a large dog, right?
So negotiation was our best option.
Even though it almost did not end well in the negotiations, right?
But we did it because all 4 of us, being experienced players, knew there was no way we would defeat a dragon.
One character, Jim, I forgot what he was playing. What character's name was?
Dwarf, a rogue dwarf.
Dwarf. Ugh, rogue dwarf. He had been hit a couple of times because he kind of separated the party. He was on his own. He got hit a number of times. He got hit like 3 or 4 times.
And none of us had a lot of hit points.
And we were about 25 hit points average.
I had 31 or something like that.
Yeah, I had 24. And he might have had about the same. And I don't know about the druid, but that little first skirmish wasn't all that bad for us, the 3 of us. But the dwarf, he had got hit more because he was by himself and he had more creatures on him or attacking him. And so just the law of averages, he got hit more. He was not doing very well. I mean, he was like more almost half hit points. So he was down to like 15. And I'm thinking that dragon could possibly done 15 hit points of dragon with his dragon breath. Even though he was only the size of a small dog.
Doesn't matter. I mean, he was a dragon.
He was a dragon. And I think you encountered a little dragon. What, remember? The little
worm?
The little worm.
Oh. That thing killed me. Or would have killed me.
I think it already knocked you out. It breathed on you, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that saved Alan was because he had that uncanny dodge because he was a rogue and was able to avoid getting hit by the breath weapon. So in that case, what would have happened if we would have... I don't think our GM would have let us retcon if we all died. And let's say we're just going to attack. And
one, there wouldn't have been enough time.
Well, right. There's that. But if there was enough time, you think we were all died and said... Well, can we backtrack all the way back to the beginning of that?
When we see the dragon, can we start over?
No. So you're right. I think this idea that you can redo the whole adventure, probably not. I probably would not say yes, even though I did say yes a moment ago. Because you're right. Because where's the
excitement, the newness of it? Why would you want to redo it? Is my question.
Now, playing totally different characters to rescue those 2 bodies, or
that was a great idea from one of the GMs that answered the question. I think the consensus of the article that I read was that it's up to each GM to decide whether they want to let you redo stuff.
Of course.
But are you going to have a good time doing it? Are you setting an expectation to your players that you're always going to let them redo stuff? Are you playing with kids where you're trying to teach them the consequences of actions?
Ooh.
Are you playing with adults where they might need to know that there are consequences to their actions? There's all these ideas, right? Do you, like Saul says, you let them redo something, or you tell something that is a different perspective, or I meant to tell you that you were in a shop instead of a bank when you did this.
Right. Something
like that is unimportant to the game, except in your head, and you just want to tell the people. Or a character that says, I really shouldn't have done that. I think that I should give you this because I shouldn't have earned it, or something like that, versus you killed me, I want to redo it.
Well, I was talking about that brooch. If somebody stole a brooch or something or whatever, and I'm thinking, maybe the player had written down on his character sheet or had rolled on a personality trait or whatever that the person was a klepto or greedy.
Yeah.
So by bypassing that, taking of the brooch would go against that character's personality. So you know what? I totally forgot about this person, about me being greedy or having kleptomaniac tendencies.
I'm a thief, dude.
Yeah, and so, or even if it's a druid, right, or anything else,
Right.
where it's not a thief, or a thief would say, "Oh yeah, I'll take it," but another character who has that
Right,
character
right.
flaw, right?
Right.
So, but see that character flaw would, if you would have taken a brooch, let's say they're trying to sneak into a house without leaving any evidence
Right.
that they had snuck in the house, so taking a brooch might play against that. So he didn't do it because the player says, "Oh, I don't want to leave evidence," but then he remembered that his character was kind of a klepto.
But you could also use that as a learning experience for him, so the next time something like that occurs, he would remember that he would have to take it
Right.
as his character.
Or have it, he would have to consider
roll
it.
to. I need to roll to consider whether I'm going to take this brooch
Well,
and
you
put
could
it in
do
my
that.
pocket.
You could do the Steve May way of deciding actions, or you could just decide whether you're going to do it. No, I'm going to fight that urge right now. Okay, fine. I mean, I don't usually like
Rolling for stuff like that.
rolling for stuff like
No,
that.
I understand. But
Though
when he says that, he means that, Steve is always doing this. It's more when we play board games than role-playing games.
no, but he does that like if he has to, if he has to.
If there's going to be splash damage or something,
Yes.
he'll go, okay, you're 1, 2, you're 3, 4, you're 5, 6. He'll roll a dice and go, okay, you're dead.
Sorry,
Sorry, but the dice told me. So
Yeah,
there you
but
go.
he does do that for board games where
Yes.
he has to.
Where he has to choose who to give a bad card to or something because he doesn't want his wife to get pissed off at him. He doesn't care if I get pissed off at him, but
It doesn't work sometimes. That's a loaded die, Steve. Okay, so
but
you're right.
There's that idea.
Yeah.
Right? I think the biggest drawback of redoing stuff is metagaming, right? Because you're redoing it because you realize that, like, not in the moment, but later on, if you go back and say,
Oh yeah, it's
well,
total metagaming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have died because I forgot to add 1 point to my
That's
to my thing.
classic.
See, there, I really had this, so you shouldn't have killed me. I don't know. Maybe you should just make a new character and learn from that experience.
Right, and in that case, the 1 point probably I would be real suspicious if adding 1 point to that person's save, that character save, would have really changed the whole outcome of the battle or the whole outcome of the situation, or would have prevented both of the characters from dying. I know a save can do that, and if he remembers, oh, I missed it by 1, which I'm kind of suspicious about. So you're right. I probably would not. I said I would let them play it over, but then again, as a GM, would I want them to go through the same? I guess it's like a dungeon. Right?
Yeah. It was
so-
a crypt. Yeah.
And I wouldn't. Yeah. Or I would say, you know what? Just make different characters, and we'll continue from there. Or like you said, I like that idea where you make new characters and you save the old characters.
There's another idea that came out of that article was that.
Actually, you have a cleric though.
Yeah, you should always have a clerk. The other idea that came out of that article was that it gives the GM a chance to tell the story in a different way, to make it more exciting. So say you do replay it, but you change it up a little bit.
Definitely have to change it.
If you go in there and whatever killed those guys, maybe it died or something because they hit it and it's laying there dead next to them.
Right.
So, but there's something else in there.
Right.
Or
I don't mind the idea of replaying it, kinda, except it might be a little bit boring. But I wouldn't replay it exactly the same. I would change monsters. I would change the situation.
yeah, I wouldn't let you go back into the battle and I get to add my 1 point. I made it.
That might be interesting to go back to that one moment and replay it from there and see if it stayed the same.
That would have to be like a dream sequence or something, or a time loop thing or something.
The alternate universe. There's a couple of movies that do that rather
And
well.
the idea that you failed by 1 point, isn't that the randomness of rolling the dice? The randomness of because like the game we played in online with the guy that was playing the druid, he was rolling excellently.
Oh, yeah.
He was making every single roll.
Oh my god, it's terrible.
Which was amazing, and
I
we
couldn't
kept
roll-
going.
and
We
I
kept
couldn't-
going. All of us were laughing because the dice fall the way the dice fall, right?
It was funny.
Even electronic dice.
Yeah, it was funny because we were playing, and we were playing the Con of Champions because tabletop events has all kinds of things canceled, and they run convention. They do the payment system. They do the game,
setting up game or getting into
the
games.
game slots and all that crap. And a lot of conventions use it. And in fact, KublaCon was using it.
Yes.
This first time I think this year. And they were basically saying
we're going to go out of business
Yes,
because
because-
all these conventions have canceled and taken all of the money away from us that we
we
would
don't have
make.
no revenue.
No, nothing.
And unfortunately, they just can't shut down and save money by not having their servers and then start back up. They have to keep the servers going, and that, of course, takes a lot of money. But anyway, so we decided to play to help them out a little bit. And I think they almost funded. They wanted $54,000 to be able to
Go
keep
for a
the
year
servers
so
for
they
the,
can.
to the end of the year.
We were talking about rolling dice,
Oh,
randomness.
You were talking rolling dice, and I forgot his name. But the player was being really lucky, and so I was
Grammon or something.
Grammon was the character's name. You're right. Grammon was the character's name. And so my character finally said, he goes, well, you just keep looking and doing everything because you're fantastic. Because I kept rolling out, my rolls were like all
his
under 10.
Observation rolls or whatever they were not really tracking.
He was tracking. He was observing. He was doing
survival, all kinds of things, and Saul was rolling like 4s and 5s.
Yeah, I was not doing very well. So I just kept saying, well, I don't see a thing.
I don't see it, but what do you see?
I'm following you. That's all I was doing. And it turned out pretty fun.
That is the randomness of
Yes.
the dice, right? So
Yes.
it doesn't matter what your skills are for your character, and I think that should be an element you consider before you let people redo stuff.
So you had mentioned coddling, I don't know when, but Mike, who came up with this idea of coddling players or not.
I don't
coddling
think he
them.
actually came up with the idea, but he says that a lot of people are coddling players
Yes.
these days instead of allowing them in the way we used
But
to do it in the
he
old
kept
days.
using the term "let the dice fall where they may," right? And so I'm like, okay. And so there is some truth to that, right? There is some truth that the dice are the final arbitrators of fate.
Shadowrun is the absolute trueness of that, right?
Why?
You have so many dice, and you can have a dice pool of 32, and you may not get 1 6 in those 32 when you roll.
Oh, you need a 5 or a 6, so that's a little better.
Well, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
you may not get any successes. You may get like 21s, but no successes.
Right.
Things like that happen, right? So you have to be prepared for that as a player, right? That 20-sided dice has a 1 on it, so sometimes you fail. Different things like that,
Oh,
right?
no, and sometimes the dice are really against you. I mean,
That's why the dice have little jails that you put them in, and you don't use them for the rest of the day.
I remember I've told the story about Bay and his character in Tales of the Loop. He had an 8 dice pool, and all he needs is a 6, 1 6 to succeed. And you have the mechanic of there's a built-in mechanic where you can push a roll, which means if you push a roll and if you succeed, you're good. But if you fail, you take a condition. You get 4 conditions and you're out of the game.
We had that kind of mechanic in the Alien game, and let me tell you, you took stress for every single time you failed or you pushed, and you ended up with these extra stress dice that were always bad. You could never, once you got to a certain amount of stress, you just curled up into a ball and laid on the floor until your stress went away.
Which was funny because one guy was playing the stress mechanic. What is it? I would say the number crunching game, right?
Yeah.
Because in the one I ran at Pacificon. Remember the pilot?
Mm-hmm.
He had figured out because he goes, well, if I only had 3 dice, then my chances of rolling a 1 on that die is really low, and all this other stuff, right? So he kept pushing and he pushed like 3 times, So in that game, instead of just you pushing and you get to roll over, you add a die. So there's a mechanic where actually you get better as you get more and more stressed out.
But you also get to where you can't move if you get too stressed out when the robot is coming to kill you.
So what's fun about that is that the extra die is a different color, and so in the Alien game, the regular dice are black and the stress die are yellow. And so I actually had black dice, just not the fancy ones from Modiphius or Free League. And so he had black dice and he had the yellow dice, and if you roll a 1 on the stress die, that means that you
get another complication.
You have to roll to see if you panic.
Yes.
And so as you get more stress, you actually get chances of succeeding go up because you have more dice.
But you also get chances of curling up into a ball go up.
Right. So it's a really good mechanic, but this guy must have been a mathematician because he's like in his head, he's figuring out the odds of how much these extra dice we're gonna do, and the chance of him rolling the 1 on them, and then after that, what you need to roll to get a actual panic attack.
Right.
I think he pushed it to the edge, and he goes, "Well, 1 more, put me in a danger zone." And so he did it again. He stressed himself out, added another die, and then he panicked because the more stress you have, the easier it is for you to panic.
By the way, that's a excellent mechanic thing or mechanism for the Alien game, because you do get stressed, and you are going to want those extra stress dice because you
Want to succeed.
You want to succeed because otherwise you're going to die.
It fits the game really well. So you're right. Going back and figuring out that you want to change things
because you were 1 point off.
Yes,
or
that might
if
be.
I would have rolled a 6 instead of a 5, or if I wouldn't have rolled that 1.
Well, we've been in those situations in the games I run, either D&D or even Shadowrun, where people are like, I gotta make this roll, right?
And you know what Saul does is if you don't make the roll, he lets you roll it again. I mean, and most good GMs will, right? Like you roll a 1 and you're gonna get your head chopped off because you fall or something. And
I don't think I've ever let you guys re-roll something, have I?
yeah, you have.
Oh, I'm a terrible GM.
Well, no, I think it comes with playing with kids where you can see that they're going to cry and you go, okay.
I don't know. What was the last time
That's a different kind of do-over than coming back to you and saying, well, if I forgot to put this point on there.
So for me, it's like, I think it's okay for little things.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay for things that just happened, like, the action before. I think it's okay to make the story make sense, or like change the scene, like you said.
Yeah.
Oh, that didn't happen in a bank; it happened in a grocery store or whatever. Or it didn't happen on the second story; it happened on the fourth story, for whatever reason.
Unless you're trying to get to the 152nd floor or something, then you know.
It's and along with that, if the change is just window dressing, right? Yeah. Then it's okay. The cons, again, I'm going to say players use it to change an approach, like. Let's say they have 3 competing ideas, and they go with the one they like the best.
Well, that didn't work. Let's try it again.
Let's try it again, and they're like, oh, okay, and then try it again. That's probably not a good reason to retcon or backtrack a game if it happens a lot. And it's kind of an idea that I have. It's use it as a crutch. What could go wrong, or what do you got to lose to use a?
Yeah, well, and it takes away the excitement, right?
Right, and I think the one that really. For me, is I don't want backtrack is when players use it to change a dumb decision they make, because I don't usually run games on a high a high time structure, like not time structure, like on a time limit. I don't say okay, you
have 1 minute to tell me what you're gonna do.
Yeah, or 30 seconds, right? What are you gonna do? Usually, and I'm actually too lax in that sense, because sometimes when a battle happens, they start strategizing and going, okay, you're gonna do this, you're gonna go that, and I'm not, and I kind of let that go on a little bit too long. But so I should shorten that, because they don't,
Or you should just get up and walk out of the room and let the players have their discussion.
No, because in a time sensitive situation, you don't want an hour of strategizing, right? It doesn't make any sense. So at the same time, though,
there are games where that has to happen, though, and I'm going to tell you right now, Shadowrun is one of them.
Well, Shadowrun, you usually have that session where you're planning stuff.
Yes.
But that's like a Mission Impossible, right?
Yes.
Where they have, we're going to go do this on Sunday, and today's Monday, so we're planning what the thing is, or the Italian Job, or what's that other one? The Ocean's 11.
But
right?
It's funny. I thought it was just our group that did that, but I was watching YouTube and. All groups do that, because you have to have that. You have to figure out what you're going to do. Yeah. You have to figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah, and of course, as somebody said, it all goes wrong because somebody missed a stealth roll. Right?
Yes.
So that's an idea. That's one thing. The idea that I don't want the players to spend too much time planning something, and then they go, and then if the plan doesn't work well, we're gonna change the plan.
Yeah.
We're gonna try a different take. Probably not, or change the decision, a dumb decision.
So basically what you're saying is that it's okay to change the small things. Right. It's okay to backtrack if you're in the moment. But if you give the player an opportunity and you say, are you sure you're going to do that? And they say yes. And you say, okay.
And they do it.
It's
a dumb decision.
It's a dumb decision. And they die.
Or they get, or it really cause the death of another character.
Or something like, ooh,
that would be bad.
That would be bad. That would be really bad. So you got to think about what you're going to let people backtrack on or redo or retcon. Maybe, but in a mystery game, it might be pretty cool to see all the different perspectives or something. How people...
That would be a different mechanic.
That would be a different kind of, yeah.
Yeah, because that different perspective doesn't change
what
really happened.
What happened, yeah.
Right. I think you be very careful about backtracking. Don't get into the habit of doing it all the time. The less you do it, I think it's the better for
I think
you
so.
as a GM and your players, right?
Especially as a GM, because your players are going to get this expectation that you will do it if you do it. If you do it more than once.
Yeah.
Even if you do it once,
You become
they're going to come back to you and say, I really didn't
Yes.
want to do that. Can I please have my spell back? Can I please have my gem back?
or changes their spell, something like that.
Yeah.
What about that?
Well, see,
You know
that's...
how you pick your spells at the
Yeah.
beginning of the day for like a cleric or druid?
Well, clerics, I don't know exactly how that works because I've never played a cleric.
Well, but they have to choose
But
their spells
that's
for
why
the day.
that's why I play a sorceress because I have access to all my spells and I have spell slots
Yes.
and I can choose what I'm doing.
Right.
Versus a wizard or a warlock or a cleric who has to pick their spells for the day and learn them or whatever.
Yes.
I just thought that was just too hard because then what if I pick the wrong spell?
Well, not only that, there's information overload or, well, not information, but decision overload.
Yeah.
There's so many spells that you can take for the cleric. Like, let's say
You have access to all of
all
them.
your
You just
spells,
have to
but
choose
you just got to
them.
choose which ones you're going to use that day.
Yeah.
Or that session.
Yeah.
You're like,
But
oh,
how do
man.
you know what you're going to run into that day?
So the good thing they did is that in the old days, clerics used to have to choose, like healing spells, right? But what they did now is that you could swap out any level spell for a healing spell.
Oh, see.
So that's okay. So that kind of gives you a little bit more. What is it?
See, with that game that we were playing online, we didn't have a healer, and I didn't. I looked in my. It was the characters were provided. I looked in to see if I had any healing potions, and I didn't. So I couldn't even help the dwarf.
We were. I don't know about the druid. I don't know what spells the druid. I think druids do have some sort of healing, but I don't know what level.
Yeah,
it is
I don't know what level it is or anything. Yeah.
And he wasn't throwing any kind of healing spells
No.
that I saw.
No,
So I would use it judiciously, and I would probably use it
sparingly.
very sparingly, and probably not even like once per session, once every 5 sessions or something like that. Because you're right. I think if you give in as a GM, then players, give them
They'll
an
take
inch,
advantage of you,
give them an inch, and they'll take a whole foot.
and you'll sit there and you will listen to the person explain to you why they can shoot through walls, and the angle, and where the arrow is coming from, and how they managed to do this.
How it could be a perfect shot.
And if I would have just rolled that one other dice, or I forgot that I get advantage, I should have been able to do that.
Advantage, yes.
And you'll be sitting there and you will never do anything except redo stuff.
You'll be retconning the whole game.
So I'm just going to say, for me, I probably wouldn't redo stuff, but unless, if it's a little kid that dies, I would probably say, okay, here comes a healer and they heal you and you didn't die. Because that's just the way I am. I don't want little kids to cry at my table. So
There
now
you go.
adults...
They can cry all they want.
We'll
She don't
see.
care.
I probably wouldn't let them cry either. But don't count on Saul not letting them cry.
I've gotten a little bit more, hardened.
Yes.
And I could give a crap if they die.
So good luck with
Honestly.
your asking to redo things. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul?
and Jolene.
You have a
Have
good
a
day.
great day.